Hello, I'm Nobby Clark. Welcome to my workshop. Recently I showed you this little Mamod minor engine that I bought from a local antiques curios shop or mall. It was in, as you saw, if you saw the previous video, it was in pretty poor condition really. The base and the frame that holds the boiler is very, very rusty indeed. I said I wanted to do a minor restoration to it, and I wanted to do the minimal amount of work just to tidy the engine up, but not really mess around with the boiler itself, because I wanted to retain all the lovely patina that the boiler had. So I completely dismantled the model. I cleaned up the boiler frame and the base. This you can see I've painted in black, and the base in green this time. I think well, it was green before, very much darker green, but this is the green I happen to have. It's one I'd used on a previous steam engine I'd made. So I've done the minimal amount of work really. Originally it had on the front here just a little screw. Um, I I don't know that that was original anyway. There's a little tiny nut that's been soldered on here, not soldered very well as far as I can see. So whether this is something that the previous owner had added to it, I did notice on one or two of these that I saw on eBay that it did have something like this in it. I made this little screw out of brass with a little Tommy bar on it, so that can be tightened up. Um, it's possible, like the Mamod traction engine, which has a screw in the back here, that you can use this as a means of setting a water level. So as you pour water in through the top of the boiler, it will overflow through this hole here and give you a sort of water level position. So rather than sort of mess around with removing the nut on here and making a cover plate, I thought, well, let's just make this nice little screw on the front. I did order on eBay a couple of little Mammoth decals. These are not genuine original ones from Mammoth. I think there's a number of people that make these. These ones are vinyl, which I found very, very easy to position and stick on. Some of them are water transfers. So my experience in the past of using water transfers on Airfix models and so forth are not the easiest thing in the world to fit. And as the metal here is still quite uneven, I was sort of happier to have the vinyl ones. But it just makes it look a little bit smarter, I think. Anyway, I mentioned that I'd made for the traction engine. I had this little adapter, if I can get it out, so that I could attach a tube to it, so that I can run this on air from my compressor. But what I wanted to do was to make a safety valve for it, and this is what I've made. They're You can still buy the Mamod ones. They're relatively expensive, really, I guess, for what they are. But I suppose if they're a genuine part, fair enough. I did some research on YouTube and on the internet on safety valves. But this particular design is one I've copied from one that Rob at the channel Zanudu made for one of his models. He made his in a different way. I think he used a couple of bolts in the top and bottom of his, but I'm opted to make the whole thing. So the body of this is made out of brass, threaded here to fit the top of the boiler, a little bit of knurling on here to help it screw into place, and a little adjusting nut on the top. This is made out of stainless steel. He showed on his channel a picture of one that he'd found on the internet, and I went back to that and based it on the one he'd made. So inside here, if I carefully remove this little bolt from here, it has a spring and a ball bearing. So it's simple in its operation. The ball bearing sits in the base here. The ball bearing is held in place with a little spring, and then the screw on the top here can be adjusted down to the correct amount of pressure on the spring to hold the ball bearing in position in relation to the pressure that the steam will blow off through the boiler. I thought I'd make this, not that I'm ever going to run this on steam. I'm much happier just to run it on compressed air from my compressor. But I suppose if this ever came into someone else's hands later, they have got a valve they can use on it. When I made this, I originally made the adjusting screw out of brass with a bit of knurling on the top as well. I put an O-ring in here, which is not necessary. It doesn't need that there because the idea of that is it's going to allow for adjustment. But I wanted to make it slightly different and out of a different material, and I don't think I've made the thread on here long enough anyway. So with this one, I made a much longer thread, and I think it looks quite nice in stainless steel. It has a hole through here so that here I can push the ball bearing up. It can go sort of around the spring and then release through the hole in the top there. I've just tested that by blowing some air through this, through the compressor, and it seems to function okay. But as I say, it's not. It's more just to sort of complete the general looks of the model, really, more than anything else. Obviously, there's an O-ring at the bottom here, so that would seal at the base. So apart from that, that's really all I've done to it. Obviously, I've oiled all the moving parts on it. I did take everything apart and give it just a clean over, just wiped it over basically. And I really like it having this original pattern. I know that if you clean this and polished it, eventually it would just return to this colour anyway. But I wanted to leave it as I got my hands on it basically. But the base and the frame for the boiler did really need some attention. I've not bothered to repaint the flywheel. I think that looks okay. There's a bit of paint off the front here. It's got a little groove in here so that you can put a pulley on it to run other toys from it. And I did sort of put a bit of paint around some of the missing areas on the top of the chimney, which again, on this, the chimney is purely decorative anyway. So I think in the end it came out quite nice. The burner was in a pretty poor state. It looked very, very grubby, and this sort of wire handle on here was very, very rusty. So all I did with this was put it in a little plastic container and fill the container over the top with some distilled white vinegar, which I've used before on steel to remove rust. That did a pretty good job. I just left it soak in that overnight, and took it out in the morning and just gave it a scrub over with some warm soapy water and a fingernail brush. Apart from that, I've done nothing else to it. I've not attempted to polish up the little copper burn. I just sort of left it as it was, so it's retained a patina like the engine itself. That's really all I wanted to do with it. But that's come up quite nice, and it was nice that this was actually with the engine as well. I know this is something that does very often get lost. So again, that sort of really completes it. So I hope you like what I've done. I've not done what a lot of people do and polish these up till they've got a mirror finish on them. I don't like that at all, and I don't like that on tools where people get very old tools and restore them beyond how they look when you buy them. I'd much rather see, don't like to see rust on items, but I'd much rather see some of its original patina. Anyway, thank you for joining me in the workshop today. I hope I'll have another video for you very soon. And also thank you to the subscribers to my channel. A few more added just recently. Even if you haven't subscribed, please do. And keep the comments coming. It is nice to hear from people with ideas, suggestions, and advice for me as well. I like to get advice from other people with a lot more experience than myself. This has helped me along so much over the last year that I've been running the channel. So we'll leave it there, and bye-bye for now. I'll see you very soon. If you're still with me and haven't signed off after watching the first part of this video, I wanted to make just a little update to my video on my little Mamod minor engine. Before I do that though, I would like to just send a message to Matty of Matty's Workshop. I don't know how many of you are familiar with his channel. Matty lives in Australia, and he's just undergone some hospital treatment, which I understand he's just in the process of recovering from now. So if you happen to pick up on this video, Matty, I mean, all the very best to you and to your family and for you for a speedy recovery and a full recovery as well. And I hope that you'll be back in your workshop very, very soon and be able to continue with your excellent videos. So all the best to you, mate. I hope you get well very, very soon. Also, a little apology in my last video where I showed making small machinist's toolmaker's clamp. I apparently was told that part of it, the audio was out of sync. My apologies for this. It's something that sort of happened during the editing process where I joined all the little clips together. I don't know sort of quite what happened. I'm not a great expert in this, so I'll try and find out what the problem was and correct it and hope that it doesn't happen again. Very sorry about that. But anyway, back to the little engine. I showed that I'd made a little safety valve for it. This one, and I mentioned that I based the design on one that Rob of Zanudu had made, where you have inside the tube here a ball bearing held in place with a spring, and you've got a little screw on the top that you can adjust it for whatever sort of pressure is required within the boiler. And again, I stress that I'm not going to use this on steam anyway. I will only run this on compressed air, and I'd made a little adapter originally for my Mamod traction engine, which I bought this just a few years back, quite a nice second-hand one. I'd always wanted one as a kid. So there's the opportunity to buy quite a nice one at a reasonable price, and I've run that on air as well. And I made this little adapter so that I could fit a tube on the top to run it off my compressor. But I did a little bit more research. I looked at the safety valve on the traction engine, and this is quite a small safety valve. This one obviously is quite tall, standing on top of the boiler here. So it's quite a tall thing, doesn't really matter. But the Mamod one is very, very shallow. And I had a really good look at it. I'd never really looked at the safety valve on that before. And the way that one works, it has a rod running through the valve with a spring at the base. The rod is crimped at the bottom to retain the spring, and that pushes like a little mushroom-shaped device up through here once the steam goes through. And between that little mushroom shape and the top of this part, there's a little rubber O-ring underneath it, and it rests on that. So I'd looked at did some more research on the internet for all various different designs, and I sketched up quite a number of designs on them. And one suggestion on this particular design of valve that Robert made, he'd found a drawing for it on the internet. I thought was using a ball bearing which was attached to a rod, but when ball bearings are so hard, I don't know if there is a technique to drill into them to thread a little rod into the ball bearing. I mean, I guess that possibly is possible, but it also mentioned that a steel ball or bronze ball, and I managed to find some bronze bearings, and I've made another safety valve, this one. So I've based this sort of loosely on the Mamod one. You see it has a bronze ball on the top, and I made a fitting here which can be screwed into the top of the boiler. And then I've drilled and tapped into the bronze ball. So I've got a rod running through here, then with a spring and a tiny little nut on the bottom, so I could adjust this for the correct amount of pressure. So with this one, as the pressure would build up in the boiler, it would push up into here and raise the ball. And on the top of this brass part here, I used ball nose end mill to make a seat for the bearing to drop into. The Mammoth one I mentioned has a little rubber O-ring in between these two, but I thought perhaps having a little seat machined into it would be a slightly better idea. And obviously when this is screwed into the top of the boiler, it's only that amount that sticks up out the top, so I thought it was a little bit neater. I did think of making something on the top here like the Mamod one, which is a sort of a half round shape, like a mushroom shape. But I thought, well, this looks quite nice actually. Quite pleased with it. And I've also got hold of some fibre washers instead of using rubber O-rings. The Mamod one uses a fibre ring at the washer at the bottom, so that possibly is better. Sort of a little bit sort of loose, but these were the nearest ones that would fit over the thread on the bottom here. So quite pleased with that, and that does drop through the hole in the top here, and we'll screw into place. When the first attempt at making this, I couldn't find a suitable spring. I've got several boxes of springs that I've collected over a period of time, and all the springs I had were much too bigger in diameter. But the trick, obviously, of taking the spring out of an inexpensive biro, and I sorted through a little bag I'd got of pens I'd picked up at exhibitions and different places over the years, and found a nice fine one. And I didn't think it would have enough strength to it, but surprising enough, as a compression spring, it's got quite a lot of grunt to it. So that I think that's going to work quite well. I think, perhaps I need to. That could obviously, the nut on the bottom could be run down a bit more, or I could cut some turns off the spring if I felt it sort of needed slightly less pressure. But as I say, it won't be used as a live steam engine anyway. As suggested by Robert Zanudo, to make sort of some contact with Alan at Retro Steam Tech. It has an English YouTube channel, and Alan collects steam engines made from all over the world, and I've been looking at his videos for quite a long time now. I've never sent him a comment before, but on the last engine he showed, which was such a beautiful thing, I did send him a comment and mentioned about this engine in the comment, and Alan very kindly looked at my video and also very kindly subscribed to my channel, and he confirmed that this is a Mamod Miner. He said it's probably from about the mid-1970s, and he's pretty certain that the base is not original, possibly the strap here not original either, which is possibly the conclusion I'd come to. But I'm not going to try and find a new base for it. I guess that possibly the base may have been replaced at some time, because this one was pretty rusty anyway. I think the rust on the engine, that the boiler frame here, was worse than the base. So maybe the base had got so rusty that it was just thrown away, and somebody quite cleverly made a new base for it. Maybe that's the answer. I don't really know, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I'm sort of quite happy with it the way it is. So thank you, Alan. Thank you for your help there in sort of identifying what this engine is. Not much sort of more I can say, really. Just that I hope you sort of caught this little add-on bit to my video, and again, thanks for everyone that subscribed to the channel. Quite a lot of people have subscribed quite recently as well, which is very, very nice, and thanks again for all the lovely comments. We'll hope to have another video for you very, very soon. So from me, it's over and out, and see you soon. Bye bye.